Yeah. The PowerPoint? No, the only time that we give points back is like for remediation. Yeah. Okay. Should be working. I don't know. We'll find out. Mhm. Okay. So let me take attendance and then we will get started. I gave you guys the chapter 7 packet yesterday, right? Okay. Yep. Oh, right. Um, you need chapter 6 too, right? I didn't give out chapter 6 to you yesterday. Hold on. They're in the other room. Give me a second. These are all extras, by the way. I think she printed out way more than I asked for. So.
I think I'm weird if you never emailed me back.
Oh.
So it might be our combined
Oh.
bio.
Well.
Thank you. No,
Yeah.
it's okay. I was like, I'm not meeting with anybody. I'm not meeting with anybody. I was
No, no, no.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
that would explain why I have a bunch of copies of that. I have like 15 extra copies of chapter 7 too, but yep. Okay, that's chapter 6. I should have grabbed chapter 7 too while I was up here, but yep. Okay, so today we're gonna start on bones. Oh, I have to take attendance too, but we're gonna start on bones. Chapter 7 and chapter 8 are very closely related. So chapter 7 is about like bones and bones tissues. Chapter 8 is more about like the skeletal system and memorizing the bones. So make sure you guys don't have drinks other than water. So I got in trouble for it yesterday. So yeah, I know. I'm supposed to be enforcing more strictly. Like, I don't want your drink to spill. If you just need to like put it on the ground for now, that's fine. But just like in the future. So, which texture of hair is most fragile? Curly, right? Because it has that like thin cortex. So, learning objectives, they're on the front of your packets. which I should pull up. This is more relevant to like chapter 8, you'll see. That it's super anatomy heavy. So like the chapter 8 packet is really thickens because it's a lot of like labeling of diagrams and whatnot. So don't get freaked out when we hand that out. Chapter 7 is pretty short. So we'll probably start on chapter 8 today. Okay, so for functions of bones, bones give the body its structure. So shape, the body, bones are going to give the body its structure. Okay. Next, you have support. So the bones of the legs, pelvis, they all support the body and hold it upright. Otherwise, you'd be a giant meat sack, right? Kind of, but it's not like you could have thick bones, but not like your skeleton's like big. Yeah. Protection, so bones protect delicate internal organs. So for example, like your skull is going to protect your brain. Your rib cage is going to protect your heart and your lungs. So movement, so movement of the arms and legs. So think of how like if you attach like a rope to a wooden plank or whatever, right? If you pull on the rope, the plank is the thing moving. Same thing with bones, okay? When your muscles are contracting, they are pulling on the bones. So it's the bones that are moving, okay? Electrolyte balance. There's a lot of really, well, not a lot, calcium and phosphorus. So there's a couple really important minerals, including calcium and phosphorus, that can be both stored I guess I charged this one yesterday. Well, okay. I need to remember to charge these on the weekend. All right. Yep, it'll be in the PowerPoint. The only thing that I really take out of the PowerPoints is the multiple choice questions. Everything else I usually leave in.
After we get the PowerPoint for 2 and 3, I can get it for 1. Or I can for 2, 1 and 2, and I get 3. One of them. Like the PowerPoint.
Okay, I thought I sent it out. I'll check again. If not, I'll send it out with this week's email. Okay. Okay, so bone marrow, okay? Bone marrow is going to be the site of red blood cell production, but only red bone marrow, okay? So for describe, you can just write red bone marrow produces red blood cells, okay? So include which one produces red blood cells, red bone marrow, okay? Now, when you are born, pretty much your entire body is filled up with red bone marrow. So you can see infant 1 year, this is a pretty big baby, honestly, but it's charged with producing red blood cells, okay? Now, over time, what happens is the red bone marrow gets replaced with yellow bone marrow. Yellow bone marrow does not produce red blood cells. It is saturated with fat. So where's my little highlighter? So it's saturated with fat and no longer produces red blood cells. Okay? It doesn't necessarily die off, it just kind of gets replaced. So, like I said, in childhood, basically your entire body is red bone marrow. When you become adult, however, you're only going to find red bone marrow in some areas. So your ribs, your sternum, your vertebrae, skull, pelvis, and then the very tops of your humerus and thigh. Or sorry, your humerus and your femur. So top of your arm, top of your leg. Okay? Now, if you ever donate red bone marrow, right? So a lot of people are under the impression that red bone marrow can only be found in your hips because when you donate bone marrow, what they do is they stick a giant needle right here, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, so that's the only place red bone marrow is. No, but if you look where pretty much all the other red bone marrow is located, right? You don't want to be sticking a giant needle in your skull. So same thing with your ribs. You don't want to be sticking a giant needle right next to your lungs. So the advantage of the hip is that it's really easy to get to, and it's not super close to like really detrimental structures. So if you mess it up, it's not the worst thing on the planet. I mean, like, you obviously don't want somebody to mess that up, but if it happens, it's not going to kill you. You don't need to know where bone marrow donation happens. The only reason I say that is to point out that red bone marrow is found in other places in the body. They're just closer to vital organs. Okay, you're doing pretty good on time too. Okay, so for bone development, Now, if you look in your book or you look in outside sources or anything like that, you are going to see way more complicated stuff than we want you guys to know. Okay? So if it's not on the notes page, don't worry about it. This is the third time I've taught this lecture, so I haven't come across anything that I'm like, oh, maybe you should add this. Don't worry about that. Okay? If it's not on the note page, don't worry about it. So intramembranous ossification. When we say intramembranous ossification, we are talking about the ossification of fibrous connective tissue. Okay? So you're going to see this on some parts of the skull and the face. So in between your skull bones, you have fibrous joints. Over time, they solidify. Okay? And we'll talk about why that is when we get to chapter 8. Yep, the skull and the face. Okay? Endochondral ossification. Whenever you see chondro, you're talking about cartilage. Okay? So endochondral ossification is going to be the ossification of cartilage. And you're going to see it in long bones. So most of your bones are going to evolve from cartilage. And don't worry about the where it happens yet. It's on the next slide. Okay? So intramembranous ossification, ossification of fibrous connective tissue happens in the skull and the face. Endochondral ossification, ossification of cartilage. Most bones are going to evolve from cartilage. It's on the next slide. That happens at, it's on the next slide. So occurs in most bones, well, it occurs in most bones, but you can write long bones, occurs in most, occurs in long bone because the next line is most bones evolve from. So occurs in long bones, most bones evolve from, blank is cartilage, and happens at, we're going to talk about on the next slide. Okay. So, endochondral ossification, again, replacement of cartilage by bone, and it is going to happen at the epiphyseal plate. Okay, so if you remember when we had that diagram of the femur, yeah, you have that line there, or it was the tibia, I think, but this is a femur. That is your epiphyseal plate. It is, in a sense. Well, it was at some point. So the way that bone elongation happens, okay? Actually, let me get to the next slide so you guys can write that stuff down while I'm talking about it. But so some factors that affect bone growth, okay? Starting with heredity, all right? So you obviously inherit a certain amount of genes from your parents that determine your maximum height potential. This is not an end-all be-all. The example that I always use, my grandmother is 5'4". My dad is 6'3", okay? Obviously, her genes didn't play a huge role in his height, or mine for that matter, but she's about this big and weighs 90 pounds. She's tiny. He is not. So heredity, it does determine your maximum height, but it's not the only thing, okay? Nutrition is another big thing. So when children grow up, they really need nutrition for proper bone growth. So especially calcium and phosphorus, and especially vitamin D, honestly, okay? I've been skipping over vitamin D in my other classes. I feel like I should bring it up because when we do the group activity, everybody always forgets calcium and phosphorus and vitamin D. So I'll go back and do that if you guys are listening to this recording. I'll point it out in your next class. For hormones, okay? There's a giant list of hormones, right? You guys don't need to worry about a lot of them. I really just want you guys to focus on knowing growth hormone. All right, so it does exactly what it sounds like. Growth hormone makes you grow. Okay, and last but not least, exercise. So you need to have adequate physical stress in the form of weight-bearing exercise, so making sure you are walking. Otherwise, bone destruction outpaces bone growth. So use it or lose it, literally.
So if you like start, I know your height is kind of like overweight at like 18 or something, right?
Mhm.
But if I walk more, would I grow?
We'll talk about it. And the next slide, actually.
Because don't you get shorter over time, so the walking period?
You don't really, people get shorter over time usually because like their muscles are like weakening, so they're not holding themselves up right as much. It's not so much because you're like actually getting shorter. It's just that you're not standing upright as much. So for bone lengthening and bone widening, and I haven't forgotten, don't worry about talking about the cartilage and all that, okay? So bone lengthening is gonna occur for a fixed amount of time at the epiphyseal plate. Bone widening is gonna occur throughout your lifespan, okay? So the way that the endochondral ossification works, okay? Basically, you have cartilage filling up these areas of your bone. And at this epiphyseal line, progressively, it starts spreading out and secreting more cartilage and replacing that cartilage with bone, okay? And it kind of backs itself into a corner until it can't grow anymore. So that is why you end up getting your epiphyseal line. That is why the bone lengthening is going to occur at the epiphyseal, or the epiphyseal plate, whatever. Epiphyseal plate. The epiphyseal plate is what it's called when it's like lengthening. The epiphyseal line is what it is when it's like done lengthening, but they're the same thing. Okay. So bone lengthening occurs at the epiphyseal plate for a fixed period of time, whereas bone widening is going to continue up throughout your lifespan. Okay. And how this happens. Oh, this is just additional stuff if you guys want to read about how the bone lengthening is occurring. I'm also not going to play the animation because the animation talks about a lot more stuff than you guys need to know. Okay. So for bone widening, we're talking really about bone remodeling. Okay. So in bone remodeling, bone cells are going to continuously destroy old bone, which is called resorption, and deposit new bone, which is called ossification. Okay. So remodeling is going to repair minor traumas and contribute to homeostasis by restoring the calcium in the blood. So for your worksheet, resorption, ossification. So you can, kind of. So we'll talk about like fracture repair towards the end of the lecture, but basically for widening, okay, what happens is your osteoclast, like if you're like, I don't know, you become like a champion jump roper or whatever, right? Your legs need to like get thicker to absorb that impact. So what happens is the osteoclasts kind of go along and they chew up the old bone that you don't really need anymore. And the osteoblasts are going to secrete more and more bone. So they secrete a thicker amount of bone if you like are using it continuously. So in childhood, when you are growing, right, bone creation is going to outpace resorption. So your bones are getting bigger. In middle adulthood, they're balanced. So your bones are staying the same size. And then after age 40, right, your bone loss is going to start to increase and your formation slows, which means you are losing bone density. So you want to have a very nice balance between the osteoclasts, which are chewing, and the osteoblasts, which are building. So for what can help increase bone density? Exercise. Okay, so if you are continuously putting like weight-bearing exercise, okay, it's going to help increase bone density.
on down the chain work.
You don't have to fill anything out for that. Yeah. So, what can help increase bone density? Exercise. Likewise, lack of exercise can promote bone loss. Okay? So next we're going to talk about osteoporosis. This is the second type of the packet. Just cross out this sentence. Is it caused by wear and tear and immune system disease? Okay? I accidentally included that. We don't talk, that's referring to arthritis. Okay? Osteoporosis is something different. So you can just cross out that sentence. Yep. So you can say describe osteoporosis. You don't need the second part of that. Okay? Yeah, your milk, like ours, like breast milk. Oh, all milk. All milk provides calcium. That's why whole milk is good for kids, but like you still get calcium from like 2%. It's just that whole milk has like fat and stuff in it. Yeah, you still get calcium from like other milks. But okay, osteoporosis. Okay. Osteoporosis is just a decrease in bone density. So bone mineral density and bone mass decreases. Okay. So over time, you start to degrade bone quicker than you make it, right? So in osteoporosis, this is happening way faster than it should. So you start to lose bone density. Okay. So since your bone density is lower, it can lead to an increased risk of broken bones. Some risk factors, you don't have to write them all down, but write whichever ones speak to you. Okay. Some risk factors. Women are much more likely to get osteoporosis. That's why it's super important for us to take calcium supplements. Age. As you get older, you lose bone density, right? Body size. I'm pretty sure it's if you're underweight, but like I could be entirely wrong about that. I don't remember if it's if you're underweight or overweight that stimulates osteoporosis.
So pretty much everything is nothing that you can do tonight.
You can take calcium supplements, especially if you're on birth control. Race, white and Asian women are at the highest risk. That one you can't really control. Family history. So if people in your family have had it, you're at a higher risk. Changes in hormones. So for example, if you're going through menopause, right? Your estrogen is decreasing. So that's a change in a hormone. Diet. So making sure you're getting enough calcium. So drinking enough milk or yogurt. Yep. Medications. So for example, certain types of birth control, like Depo-Provera, super like not great for osteoporosis. They also recently there's like a class action lawsuit against Depo-Provera for like a brain tumor or something like that. So the shot, yeah. Other medical conditions and lifestyle choices. So low activity, chronic heavy drinking, and smoking. Okay, don't smoke. Yeah, smoking. Smoking messes with everything. Like they put so much stuff in cigarettes. Yeah, it just. I mean, vaping isn't much better. Vaping definitely isn't better. It's a different kind of bad, but yeah. But cigarettes have been around longer, so they have been doing a lot more research on it, and cigarettes are really no bueno. Well, or what? No. So your jaw is considered a bone, but your teeth have different. Good morning. So your teeth are a little bit different. Yeah, calcium's important, but it's made of enamel and dentin, which is technically different than bone. But your like mandible is a bone. Okay, so for these, I shortened them for you guys to bring out the important points. Okay. So starting with simple fractures. Okay, simple fractures. Why? Okay, simple fractures I think of as you like break a chopstick and put it back together. Okay, the bone is going to remain aligned and the surrounding tissue stays intact. Right? Compound fractures. Compound fractures are when the bone breaks through the skin. All right? Yes. Because the bone is breaking through the skin, you are at an increased risk for infection. Because the same reason that you're an increased risk for infection with third-degree burns. Things that are not supposed to be exposed to the outside of your body are getting exposed. Okay? So, it damages everything. Yep, so it messes with your blood vessels, it messes with your muscle, it messes with your skin. It's really bad. So if the arm goes like well, if the bone goes through the skin, it's like really bad because you have to like get it back inside and everything. So they have to like do surgery, and it's not just like a matter of like putting a cast on it and like letting it do its thing. It's the lack of use. Yeah. So like if you're not constantly like moving your arm around, eventually like the muscles kind of like thin out. You can rebuild them, but when they're in a cast, usually like the bone is actually getting thicker, but the muscles are getting weaker, so they get thinner. Well, I mean, we'll talk about comminuted fractures, which like I guess if like the bone drifts, but like I feel like that doesn't really happen. But yeah, but I mean, your body, like, it's different if it's a foreign particle, right? Like, if you get a bullet in your body, okay, and that bullet shatters, your body doesn't know how to deal with that. Your body doesn't know how to break that down. It doesn't, like, know what to do, okay? If you get, like, a bone fracture in your body, like, unless it's something super sharp, like drifting towards a blood vessel that's really important, your body eventually will deal with it on its own, from what I understand. Yeah. They eventually grow back around it. Yeah, to a certain extent. So we'll talk about nerve regeneration in chapter 11, but yeah. Did you have a question or were you just exercising? Did you ever, I don't know, like, you know, head, shoulders, knees, and toes? In camp, we used to do like, I'm alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic. So if you want to add it to your morning routine, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Kevin makes fun of me all the time because I'm like, if I'm like really tired, I'll just like start singing it. I'm like, I don't know. It became a thing. So now you have something to add to your morning routine. Green stick fractures. Okay, green stick fractures are going to be incomplete fractures. All right. So, like what? But it doesn't go all the way through the bone. Okay. Yeah. So when you go camping, right, and you go to make a fire and you're looking for firewood, you don't pull the wood off the tree directly, right? Because the wood is still alive, so it's all bendy. But if you manage to get that stick open, it's green inside. That's where the name green stick comes from. Okay.
So it's like a little switch.
Yeah. I didn't figure this out until last semester when I was like in the middle of teaching this lesson and it like clicked why it's called a green stick. So now I include it. But yeah, so this happens a lot in children because their bones are more malleable, right? So they're more bendy. So you'll see green stick fractures more in children than you do in adults. Yeah. So that one's number 3. For number 4, comminuted fractures. So for comminuted fractures, the bone literally shatters into a bunch of pieces. So you see comminuted fractures in high impact traumas like car accidents, because when you're driving, right, you have your hands on the wheel. If you run into another car and that force comes into your wrist, it's going to shatter the ends of your bones. Okay? So, yeah. You're just in a cast. Jesus. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they put screws in there. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But I know it's a little different than a bullet. So okay, so if it works similar to how we did like the surgery in the monkeys when we cut the pieces, like you can put like bone screws back into like, huh? Yeah, my job at NYU. So like when I graduated grad school, I worked as a research assistant at NYU, and we did like neural recordings in monkeys. So we put like brain implants in, and then we taught them to play video games. Yeah, the monkeys. Yeah. No, they don't really like do it. Like they're not super cooperative a lot of the time. Because they get bored and they get like mischievous. So they like to mess with you. I don't know. No. They're born and bred entirely in research facilities. So yes. Yeah, I know. It's controversial, but it was a very cool job. I don't know. I liked it a lot. And they eat better than I do, honestly. So, like, they had like an entire kitchen set up for like just snacks for them. Yep. Like we would make like food for them. And yeah. The monkeys usually live to be like 13, 14 years old, which is like longer than they live in the wild, honestly. So, and they have like play cages and everything for them. They have buddies. They get like paired up so that they're not alone all the time. They get little friends. If they can put them in groups of 3, they do. So, I don't know. Yeah. Not a lot of people can say they've been bit by a monkey. Yeah. It was a very cool job, I will say. It just didn't pay anything. But whatever. Anyway, sorry. So comminuted fractures, shattering of the bone, okay? Spiral fractures. Spiral fractures are the ones you're gonna see the most of, especially in sports injuries. That's the twisting one. You also see this a lot in abuse cases because like people grab the arm and they're trying to get away. So you see, like if you see a lot of spiral fractures on the same person coming into the ER, it's usually a red flag. It could also just be that they're like a big sports person, but yeah. For labeling the different fractures. Okay. Oh, this is, I don't know why I highlighted this and just this, but this is just exactly what's on your page. Okay. For labeling the pictures. All right. So you have your green stick fracture, right, where it's not completely through. This is just a simple fracture. Transverse is just another word for it. Okay. So it's all the way through as opposed to the green stick, which is not. You have a comminuted fracture, which is completely shattered. Spiral fracture, you can see that twisting. Yep. Spiral fracture. So if you look at the top of the femur, right, it's in a different spot than where it started, right? Because it twists around. For compound fracture, it's bursting through the skin. Okay, so you can see the spot poking out there. Yeah, the compound fracture goes through the skin. Okay, so we're going to talk about fracture repair, and then we'll go on break. For fracture repair, okay? Now, if you break a bone, the first thing that happens is a hematoma is going to form. Do you guys remember what a hematoma is called on the skin? A bruise, right? So what happens is the hematoma is like a blood cluster, basically. All right? When it's on your skin, it shows up like a bruise. So when you break your bone, a bunch of blood gets released into that area. Okay? Eventually, it's going to transform into granulation tissue. Granulation tissue is just a way of saying healing tissue. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the tissue that helps promote healing. It's in your book if you want to read specifically, but granulation tissue is just healing tissue. Okay? I think that's a matter of opinion on it. I think it's worse in broken bones than it is in burns. But I don't really know, to be honest, because like they're different types of pain. So granulation tissue is then going to transform into a soft callus. Okay? Over time, that soft callus becomes a hard callus. And it's going to form around the fracture. All right? And eventually, remodeling, so that process of chewing away the old bone and replacing it with new bone, okay, is going to replace the callus tissue with bone. So if you're curious how this looks in picture form, this is one from the internet, and this is one from your book. Okay, so all I did from your book is just summarize what these say. The font's just really small on these, so yeah. Okay, so that is tissue repair, or fracture repair, sorry. All right, so we're gonna go on break. We'll come back, we'll do a couple MCQs. We're gonna start on chapter 8, and then we will do a group packet, or group work. Huh? That's what I'm looking right now. 10:31. All right. Take your best guess. Okay. What kind of fracture is this? Comminuted. A lot of people get comminuted and compound mixed up. Do not make that mistake. Okay? Comminuted is the shattering. Compound is when it's sticking through the skin. So, comminuted. That's actually your elbow. So you were asking me about like the elbow bone, right? So, no, this is the elbow. So, you can actually see here. This is all supposed to be one bone here. You have your radius here, and then your ulna is supposed to like do this kind of thing. And there's not supposed to be all those spaces. So this is actually part of your ulna there. That hook. No, I believe that it's like that's what defines it as a compound fracture. Because otherwise, it's either a spiral or a transverse, or sorry, a spiral or a simple. What? It's super accurate, other than the naming of the bones. Oh. Here you go. What's today? The 30th? Wow. I already have to scroll to take attendance. Okay, so which structure in bone is responsible for producing red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets? Red bone marrow. Red goes with red, okay? Yellow bone marrow is fatty, remember? It's like fatty, it doesn't produce red blood cells, all that. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Not the spine, the hip. It is like there is red bone marrow in the spine, but you don't want to take it from there because your spinal cord is there. You wouldn't. Well, it's red bone marrow in the hip. So you're drawing red bone marrow. If you're like donating bone marrow to like somebody with like leukemia or something. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the tops of your hips. So because like the other parts that you have red bone marrow in are all near like vital organs. So like your vertebrae all have red bone marrow, but your spinal cord's right there. You don't want to stick a giant needle there. Your ribs, they also have red bone marrow, but you don't want to stick a giant needle in your lungs. Same thing with your skull. So like all of the other areas, either are really hard to get to or they're by vital things or both. So you have people like curl over like this on their side and you stick a needle right here. An epidural goes right into your like spinal cord. Not kinda. So it's a smaller needle, first of all, and like you're not like putting it directly into the spinal cord. You're putting it into like the space around it. So like there's a bunch of membranes that surround your spinal cord, and you're like putting it in between one of those membranes. Like when you do a spinal tap, that's more dangerous than doing an epidural. Because epidural, you're going into like that space around the spinal cord, and then it goes into it. With a spinal tap, you're sticking a needle all the way through. So bone tissue that's dense and hard. Compact bone. Compact bone. Oh, she just got taken off the roster. Okay. Whatever. It's fine. Which bone is cube-shaped and nearly equal in length and width? Short, right? Cube-shaped, short. Make sure you read the question. So, the replacement and renewal of bone tissue is going to be bone remodeling. Okay? So both steps together. So just the depositing of new bone is going to be ossification. So ossification is making bone. When you're doing both replacing and renewing the bone tissue. So you're taking away the old stuff and putting the new stuff out. It's renewal, or sorry, remodeling. Yes, so the correct answer to this one is remodeling. I'm proud of you guys though, because my last class, they saw people start clicking ossification and the people that answered B switched. So believe in yourself. Making bone. Yep, it's just making new bone. Okay, so what we're gonna do in class activity. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start chapter 8 And there's like a big table in chapter 8. So I'm going to start chapter 8, go through the table, and that way I can leave the table up for you guys while you do the group activity so you can finish writing it down if you miss anything.
So with resorption, we tend to be.
Resorption is like breaking down old bone. Yeah. 6 through 10. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3 plus the final. Last semester we had 7 on exam 2, 7 chapters. So 5 is much better. Yep. It's going to be 50 questions. It's just on 5 chapters instead of 3. Yeah. I told you, it looks thick. It's just because there's a lot of diagrams to label. Okay.
Bye.
That's okay. I have like clicky games, flashcards help. Yep. Toes are long bones too. They might actually be considered. No, I think they're long bones. Your toes? Like they're your phalanges. I believe your phalanges are all. Now you guys have me doubting myself. Hold on. Google says yes, phalanges are long bones. And phalanges are both your toes and your fingies. Fingers, sorry. I've been spending too much time with the park with babies, I guess. We don't have a model of the foot, I don't think. I think I found all the models in the building. I don't know. I have to go check the 5th floor again. Somebody like the 2nd floor? They're on the 2nd floor still? All right. I'll go capture them. Well, somebody put them out to like decorate because anatomy wasn't taught in person last semester. So I was supposed to go around and collect them all, and I thought I had grabbed them all, and then suddenly these all appeared. A bunch of these appeared, so I thought somebody else like went around and grabbed them, but nope, there's just a bunch. Okay. It's okay, I'll go find them because I don't want you to get in trouble for like taking the models for if like somebody like misconstrues it or something. I don't know. Okay, so for the skeleton, start by learning this diagram and then get more in depth, I would suggest, but like we're not going to go through this diagram right now. Just yeah. So for the skeleton, there are 206 bones total in the body. Okay. Your axial skeleton has 80 bones, and your appendicular has 126. Okay. To differentiate between the two, your axial skeleton is going to be the stuff that's in white. Okay. So your rib cage, your skull, pelvis, vertebrae, it's the central axis. Okay. Your appendicular skeleton is going to be made up of your appendages. So your arms, your legs, pelvis, your wing bones, the scapulas, whatever. Okay. So axis is the center part. Appendicular is all the appendages. I have a little thing here to help explain that too for you guys. Okay. I'll leave this up for a second. Central supporting axis because I got to change settings anyways. Yeah, brief description, central supporting axis, appendicular, bones of the limbs, pelvic and shoulder areas. Where's my, hold on, it's frozen. Hmm. That sound. No, I have it plugged in and everything, so it shouldn't have died. That's not good. Hold on. The blue screen of death is never good. Fine. Okay. But I think it did what I wanted it to, so we're good. Okay, so Engagely.
So projections are like the things that they got.
Okay, so might help if I was on the right thing. There we go. So this is directly from your book. If you guys can't see it super well here. Okay, so a condyle. A condyle is going to be a rounded knob and usually fits into a fossa on another bone. So for example, you have these occipital condyles at the bottom of your skull. They're just little knobby guys. There's a bone right underneath it that has these two little depressions underneath, okay? Next, you have a facet, which is a flat surface. So if I hide that, let me just do this actually. Hide others, okay? So on your vertebrae, you have these flat surfaces here. These are facets. So you see how they're flat? So facets are flat. Heads. No, it's still bone. It's just, it's showing the cartilage on this too. These are bone markings. It's just that sometimes they have cartilage covering them. Okay. For the head, this is why I was saying don't use the term head for describing the top of the bone, because technically this part is the head, the thing that sticks out. Okay. So your femur has a head, your humerus has a head. It's the prominent, it's a prominent rounded end or something. I forget what the exact word is. Prominent expanded end of a bone. Okay. Next, you have your projections. Okay, so projections are just things that stick out, basically. So for example, for a crest, okay, it says a moderately raised ridge. You have this bone marking at the back of your skull called your occipital crest. So it kind of looks like a really small fin. Epicondyles. So an epicondyle is a, what is it? A bump superior to a condyle. So technically, these are your medial and lateral epicondyles. I don't remember why they're called epicondyles as opposed to condyles, but they're just rounded spots, basically. Okay. A process is a projection or a raised area. So for example, I use the skull for a lot of these examples because like I'm more familiar with it than the rest of the body. But for example, you have this sticky guy right here, okay? This is your styloid process. So it's something that just sticks out. You have this thing right here that sticks out. That is your zygomatic process, or zygomatic arch, but sometimes it's called zygomatic. I don't know. But this one is the styloid process. So just something that sticks out, okay? Then you have spines, which are a sharp pointed process. I mean, I don't know how the styloid is in this upper spine, but I can never remember like a good example for a spine. I guess your iliac spine. You have an iliac spine, so like something that sticks out like here. So it just sticks out. It's sharp pointed. I don't know. Sometimes the descriptions aren't super accurate, but whatever. Trochanter's are large processes that are only found on the femur. So you have two of them on the back of your femur. You have a greater trochanter and you have a lesser trochanter. They just, like, if you remember that they're only found on the femur, you'll be fine. For tubercle, a trochanter. For tubercles, they're a small rounded process. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but they're just small rounded processes. Tuberosities are going to be a rough raised bump, usually for muscle attachment. Usually you can see these, like, sometimes you can see them on like really good femur models. I don't think it has it on this one, but on your hips, right? That's why I brought the whole hip model in. So on your hips, you have this really like rough area that sticks out the back here. That's your ischial tuberosity. So it's just a rough area where muscles attach. For depressions, fossas are going to be a furrow or a depression, I believe is the exact word that they use actually. A furrow or a depression, so something that sinks down. So if you remember, the condyles will go into the depressions. Foveas are going to be a small pit, so they're just kind of something that sinks down a little bit. A sulcus we're going to talk about a lot more when we get to neuro. They're a groove or an elongated projection, or sorry, a groove or an elongated depression. For passages, you have canals, which are just tunnels through the bone. So for example, you have your external auditory canal, so the tube itself. Okay, I keep forgetting I have this. So you can see that the tube goes all the way through the bone, okay? No, it's just so that when we talk about markings on the bone, you guys are familiar with the terms more than anything else. Like, if we say something like trochanter, that might be a question where it's like, what's only found on the femur, trochanters? Or like, I don't know, like the foramen magnum is a big one, which we'll talk about in a second. We talk about sulcuses and neuro. It's just, they come up as we talk about bone markings. So we haven't gotten to the meatus yet. No, the foramen. So, where did I leave off? Canal. Fissures are a long slit for blood vessels and nerves. Sometimes you can see them again on like really good femur models. This one doesn't really have it. I guess this could be considered a fissure, but it's just like a little like depression kind of. Foramen, like I said, foramen, there is a really big one that we go over a lot. Okay. This guy right here. So foramen literally just means hole. This thing is called foramen magnum, which just means big hole. Okay. It's where your spinal cord goes through. And we'll come again to it when we go to the skull. But so foramen, a round opening, usually for passageway for vessels and nerves. Meatus is a tube-like opening. So this is actually called your external auditory meatus. It's also called your ear canal. So they're very similar. The canals and the meatuses are basically the same thing. And then a sinus is a cavity within a bone. Okay, so it's like a hollow part. So like we see them when we get to like you know, like when you get like sinus infections, like sinuses are just like cavities within your bone. Okay, so this is the table that I'm gonna leave up for you guys to finish copying down. And then I have an activity for chapter 7 for you guys. And we'll pick up with the skull next time because I don't want to start getting into the skull and not have enough time to finish it. So the packets have been taking people like 15 to 20 minutes anyways. Okay. Happy guys. Are you guys all working as one group or like two separate ones? Okay. Yeah. Are you guys all working as one group? Yeah. Okay.